we'll just get this all ironed out some way, shape, form, or fashion. Here we go. So, this is by John W. Whitehead. It's originally from the Rutherford Institute. Again, you are the true guardians of the galaxy. A graduation message for a tyrannical age. When the rivers and the air are polluted, when families and nations are at war, when homeless wanderers fill the highways, these are the traditional signs of a dark age from Pima Codron, when things fall apart. So those coming of age today will face some of the greatest obstacles ever encountered by young people. They will find themselves overtaxed, burdened with excessive college debt, and struggling to find worthwhile employment in a debt-ridden economy on the brink of implosion. Their privacy will be eviscerated by the surveillance state. They will be the subjects of a military empire constantly waging war against shadowy enemies and government agents armed to the teeth, ready and able to lock down the country at a moment's notice. As such, they will find themselves forced to march in lockstep with a government that no longer exists to serve the people, but which demands they be obedient slaves or suffer the consequences. It is a dismal prospect, isn't it? Unfortunately, we who should have known better failed to guard against such a future. There was someone who was not watching this take place and did not inform the people of what was coming. Worse, we neglected to maintain our freedoms or provide our young people with the tools necessary to survive, let alone succeed in the impersonal jungle that is modern America. And this is taking place not only in America, there are a lot of countries where this is taking place, all right? Because we know ultimately it is the enemy's desire to have his own kingdom, and this includes every nation on the earth. We brought them into our homes, fractured by divorce, distracted by mindless entertainment, and obsessed with the pursuit of materialism, things that will defile you. We institutionalized them in daycares and after-school programs, substituting time with teachers and child care workers for parental involvement. We turned them into test takers instead of thinkers and automatons instead of activists. We allowed them to languish in schools which not only look like prisons, but function like prisons as well, where conformity is the rule and freedom is the exception. We made them easy prey for our corporate overlords while instilling in them the values of a celebrity-obsessed, technology-driven culture devoid of any true spirituality. And we taught them to believe that the pursuit of their own personal happiness trumped all other virtues, including any empathy whatsoever for their fellow human beings. No, we haven't done this generation any favors. Based on their current political climate, things could very well get much worse before they even take a turn for the better. Here are a few pieces of advice that will hopefully help those coming of age today survive the perils of the journey that awaits. Be an individual, all right? Be who Yah created you to be, but understand that within a greater context. For all of its claims to champion the individual, American culture advocates a stark conformity, which, as John F. Kennedy warned, is the jailer of freedom and the enemy of growth. Worry less about fitting in with the rest of the world, and instead, as Henry David Thoreau urged, become a Columbus to a whole new continents and worlds within you, opening new channels, not of trade, but of thought. And of course, we don't deal with, that ideology. This is, of course, still a Westerner writing. But let's look at the principles of this, okay? You have to know your role, is what this is saying, as an individual. It's not just being completely wrapped up in your individuality. It is being aware of your capacity. It is being aware of your gift, of your calling, of your role within the greater construct of the nation of which you are a part. Learn your rights. Know Torah. Okay, that's what this is really derived from. Of course, you can know your legal rights, but know your divine rights. All right, know your covenant. We're losing our freedoms for one simple reason. Most of us don't know anything about our freedoms. We don't know about what the Torah promises and guarantees. At a minimum, anyone who has graduated from high school, let alone college, should know the Bill of Rights backwards and forwards. As Israelites, we should know Torah backwards and forwards. However, the average young person, let alone citizen, has very little knowledge of their rights for the simple reason that the schools no longer teach them. And if, again, you're relying on an external agency or institution to do something that you should well be doing, well, you're setting yourself up for downfall. Malcolm X best said it himself. How would you let your enemies teach your children? That's foolishness. So people in power, more often than not, abuse that power. To maintain our freedoms, this will mean challenging government officials whenever they exceed the bounds of their office. Resist all things that numb you. Don't measure your worth by what you own or earn. Likewise, don't become mindless consumers unaware of the world around you. Resist all things that numb you, put you to sleep, or help you cope with so-called reality. Those who establish the rules and laws that govern society's actions desire compliant subjects. However, as George Orwell warned, until they become conscious, they will never rebel. And until after they rebel, they cannot become conscious. It is these conscious individuals who change the world for the better. And I believe that everyone who is here with us this morning, this afternoon, if you're in the land, or actually early evening, I do believe that we are conscious. Next one, don't let technology turn you into zombies. Technology anesthetizes us to the all too real tragedies that surround us. Techno gadgets are merely distractions from what's really going on in America and around the world. As a result, we've begun mimicking the inhuman technology that surrounds us and have lost our humanity. We've become sleepwalkers. If you're going to make a difference in the world, you're going to have to pull the earbuds out, turn off the cell phones, and spend much less time viewing screens. Become interactive with your people. Help others. We all have a calling in life, and I believe it boils down to one thing. You are here on this planet to help other people. In fact, none of us can exist very long without help from others. If we're going to see any positive change for freedom, then we must change our view of what it means to be human and regain a sense of what it means to love and help one another. That will mean gaining the courage to stand up for the oppressed. This is what this is all coming down to. We have to stand up for those who are oppressed. Yes, indeed, distraction is bliss. That is what they call ostracize. People self-ostracize themselves. They just put their heads in the sand and act as if they'll never see what's going on around them. Give voice. Speak. Emot. Give voice to moral outrage. Parashat Emot. To say. To speak, right? As Martin Luther King Jr. said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. That's when our lives begin to end. There is no shortage of issues on which to take a stand. For instance, on any given night, over 500,000 people in the U.S. alone are homeless, and half of them are elderly. There are 46 million Americans living at or below the poverty line, and 16 million children living in households without adequate access to food. Congress creates, on average, more than 50 new criminal laws each year. The more laws, the more corrupt that society is. With more than 2 million Americans in prison and close to 7 million adults in correctional care, the United States has the largest prison population in the world. At least 2.7 million children in the United States have at least one parent in prison. At least 400 to 500 innocent people are killed by police officers every year. At least. Americans are now 8 times more likely to die in a police confrontation than they are to be killed by a terrorist. On an average day in America, over 100 Americans have their homes raided by SWAT teams. It costs the American taxpayer $52.6 billion with the B dollars every year to be spied on by the government intelligence agencies tasked with surveillance, data collection, counterintelligence, and covert activities. All the while, since 9/11, the U.S. has spent more than $1.6 trillion with the T dollars to wage wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and police the rest of the world. This is an egregious affront to anyone who believes in freedom. Next, cultivate spirituality, reject materialism, and put people first. When the things that matter most have been subordinated to materialism, We have lost our moral compass. There's that morality Moray M70 was talking about. And give voice to moral outrage. Be indignant. Understand that, okay? Indignancy is righteous anger, right? So when the first things that matter most have been subordinated to materialism, we have lost our moral compass. We must change our values to reflect something more meaningful than technology, materialism, and politics. Standing at the pulpit of the Riverside Church in New York City in April 1967, Martin Luther King Jr. urged his listeners that, quote, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin to shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit, motive, and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. Very powerful. Very, very powerful. Pitch in and do your part to make the world a better place. Don't rely on someone else to do the heavy lifting for you. Don't wait around for someone else to fix what ails you, your community, or nation. I'm going to really not quote Gandhi, but that is a reality of you do become the change that you wish to see in the world. We know Gandhi was a racist himself, so that's a whole different matter. But say no to war. Addressing the graduates at Binghamton Central High School in 1968, at a time when the country was waging war on different fields, on different levels, and with different weapons, Twilight Zone creator Rod Serling declared, quote, too many wars are fought almost as if by rote. Too many wars are fought out of sloganry, out of battle hymns, out of aged, musty appeals to patriotism that went out with knighthood and moats. Love your country because it is eminently worthy of your affection. Respect it because it deserves your respect. Be loyal to it because it cannot survive without your loyalty. But do not accept the shedding of blood as a natural function or a prescribed way of history, even if history points this up by its repetition. That men die for causes does not necessarily sanctify that cause, and that men are maimed and torn to pieces every 15 and 20 years does not immortalize or deify the act of war. Find another means that does not come with the killing of your fellow man, end quote. Finally, prepare yourself for what lies ahead. The demons of our age, some of whom disguise themselves as politicians, delight in fomenting violence, sowing distrust and prejudice, and persuading the people to support tyranny disguised as patriotism. Overcoming the evils of our age will require more than intellect and activism. It will require decency. Here it is, Moray M70. Morality. Can it help our cause? Undeniably. Goodness, truth, and toughness. As Serling concluded in his remarks to the graduating class of 1968, toughness is the singular quality most required of you. We have left you a world far more botched than the one that was left to us. Part of your challenge is to seek out truth, to come up with a point of view not dictated to you by anyone, be he a congressman, even a minister. Are you tough enough to take the divisiveness of this land of ours, the fact that everything is polarized, black and white, this or that, absolutely right or absolutely wrong? This is one of the challenges. Be prepared to seek out the middle ground, the way, haderech, right? That wondrous and very difficult to find Valhalla, which we know in Hebrew as Shamayim, where man can look to both sides and see the errant truths that exist on both sides. If you must swing left or you must swing right, respect the other side. Honor the motives that come from the other side. Argue, debate, rebut, but don't close those wondrous minds of yours to opposition. In their eyes, you're the opposition. And ultimately, you end divisiveness by compromise. And so long as men walk and breathe, there must be compromise, he says, end quote. So are you tough enough to face one of the ugliest stains upon the fabric of our democracy? Prejudice. It's the basic root of most evil. It's a part of the sickness of man, and it's a part of man's admission, his constant sick admission, that to exist, he must find a scapegoat. To explain away his own deficiencies, he must try to find someone who he believes more deficient. Make your judgment of your fellow man on what he says and what he believes and the way he acts. Be tough enough, please, to live with prejudice and give battles to it. It warps, it poisons, it distorts, and it is self-destructive. It has fallout worse than a bomb. And worst of all, It cheapens and demeans anyone who permits himself the luxury of hating. As I make clear in this book, or this author here, the battlefield of America, the war on the American people, the only way we'll ever achieve change in this country, or in the world for that matter, is for people to finally say enough is enough and fight for things that truly matter. It doesn't matter how old you are or what your political ideology is. If you have something to say, speak up, get active, and if need be, pick up a picket sign and get in the streets. And when civil liberties are violated, don't remain silent about it. Wake up, stand up, and make your activism count for something more than politics. You are the guardians, the true guardians of the galaxy. Selah. And this is what we have to understand as Israel, especially as Israel. Our calling is not like the rest of the world's calling. As Moraim 70 said, and as Exodus 19 says, verse 5 and 6, we are a nation of priests, a set-apart people. And we must understand the power that Yah has given us and the responsibilities that come with it. This next article comes to us from Modern Ghana. It is entitled, Leaders Possess Powers of the Mouth. This is by Dag Hayward Mills. And what he goes on to say, when you access this article, do give me a 4, Bavakasha. This is dealing with the art of leadership. The new Attorney General is going to do away with low-level drug offenders' light sentences. Yep, I saw that. I did see that yesterday. And someone asked me, what does that mean? That means our community is about to get hit hard again. Intentionally. Jeff Sessions is a staunch racist. He has every intent to do away with people of color, to set America back to the Jim Crow days, if at all possible. So, Toda Rabbah, for those who access this article, giving me a 4, please do read along with me. So, Dag Hayward Mills says, snakes are wise because they use their mouths as weapons to fight, to win, and to dominate their enemies. Now keep this in mind, because we're going to come back to this in another article. Okay, snakes. Just watch this connection. This is very deep how this is all connected. Even from Moray M70's offering, what he was talking about, and how so much immorality runs rife with these so-called leaders, right? So a minister will be wise when he uses his mouth as a weapon to fight, to win, and to dominate in the spirit. This is why Yahushua said himself, the words I speak to you are spirit and life. He used the power of his mouth. Remember, it says in Proverbs, the power of life and death is in the tongue, and those who love its fruit eat thereof. All right? This is where this speaking truth to power is all situated. And it has to come from your heart, your mind. And this is why the Torah has to be ingrained. You have to know it back and forth. All right? The mouth of a snake is an amazing weapon that it uses very successfully. Snakes do not chew their food. Their teeth are good for catching and holding prey, but not suitable for chewing. They have a very flexible lower jaw, the two halves of which are not rigidly attached. They have also numerous other joints in their skull, allowing them to open their mouth wide enough to swallow their prey whole. Snakes are therefore able to swallow their prey whole, even if it is larger in diameter than the snake itself. This kind of mouth, combined with the venom we have spoken about, makes a snake an awesome predator. Every minister has been given some power in the mouth. Even our salvation comes to us when we open our mouths and confess what we believe with our hearts. Quote, that if you confess with your mouth Yahushua as master and believe in your heart that Elohim raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart a person believes, resulting in righteousness, and with the mouth he confesses, resulting in salvation. Hallelujah. End quote. If you can hear me still, give me a 1. If you can still hear what I'm saying, give me a 1. Hallelujah. Okay, Bada Sion is rebooting. She'll be right back. So some people are able to use their mouths as weapons more successfully than others. You can hear it in their preaching, you can hear it in their confessions, you can hear it in their counseling, and you can hear it in their teaching. Become a strong proclaimer, Emot, right, and confessor of the word, and you will be a wise serpent. Okay, and this is what Yahushua says, be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. And the way that you become wise as serpents is you have an understanding within your head and you articulate it. You speak truth. Okay, now here's the question. What makes Yah's word true? That is not a rhetorical question. This is a question I would want to see responses from. What makes Yah's word the truth? It's a simple reality. Can someone type that in the text box? What are your thoughts on that? Exactly, Auntie. You were there. You already had you had an insight on it. Oh man, the truth is that it comes to pass. That's why it is the truth, because it is fulfilled. It does not fall to the ground. Okay, that is what the truth is. Ash, I don't know what you're talking about. Hopefully you're on point. If not, we don't want to dot or actually boot you out. All right, but let's get this back to the article. 7 ways you can use the power in your mouth. 1. Develop your ability to speak forth positive confessions about your life and the ministry. Quote, for verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he says. Mark 11, verse 23. 2. Develop your ability to preach. For after that, in the wisdom of Elohim, the world by wisdom knew not Elohim. It pleased Elohim by the foolishness of preaching to save them that believe. 1 Corinthians 1:21. 3. Develop your ability to teach. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yea, he gave good heed and sought out and set in order many proverbs. Ecclesiastes 12:9. 4. Develop positive proclamations over your congregation. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. This is Proverbs 18:21. 5. Develop your ability to counsel and advise people. We took sweet counsel together and walked into the house of Elohim in company. Psalm 55:14. 6. Develop your ability to bargain with men and to persuade them. Knowing therefore the terror of Yah, we persuade men, but we are made manifest unto Elohim, and I trust also are made manifest in your consciences. 2 Corinthians 5:11. And 7. Develop your ability to create and invent with your mouth. By faith we understand that the world was created by the word of Elohim, so what is seen was made out of things which do not appear. Hebrews 11:3. And through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of Elohim, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do not appear. And that's also Hebrews 11:3. So to be wise as a serpent, you must use the gift and the favor Elohim has given you. You must develop the power of the mouth. You are snared with the words of your mouth, and you are taken with the words of your mouth. And that is from Proverbs 6:2. So the power of the mouth, we must possess that. We must understand the power that Yah has placed within us through speaking, because our enemy well understands this, as this next article will demonstrate, which comes to us from CNN.com. Interesting, I was driving to work, I believe it was Thursday, Yom Hamashi, and I was listening to Democracy Now! And this journalist was on the air talking about this article that we're about to read, and how Donald Trump is telling you everything that he's about to do, but people are not taking him serious. They are not really considering what he's saying. and what he intends on doing. And so, as a result of that, it will be to the people's own demise that they did not heed what it is that Donald Trump is saying. In fact, she cites other such leaders, such as Hitler, Mussolini, and other tyrants who spoke with their mouth, telling people what their intentions were, and ended up fulfilling everything that they said that they had intended to do. What just happened? I'm sorry, I just had my computer, not the computer, but the my Internet Explorer just completely shut down. Hopefully it comes back to where it was. Just give me 1 second. It doesn't look like it is. Well, ain't that about a target? Oh, unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right, people, give me 1 moment. Let me pull this article back up. I'll pull it up from here, and then I'll get everything going as well shortly. This is one of those days. The challenges are just all technical right now. So I do just ask for you to bear with me. So Trump at his most dangerous is the name of this article. It is, again, from CNN.com by Ruth Ben-Ghiat. Ruth Ben-Ghiat is the author's name. This is an opinion piece. This is what she says. Sometimes political change happens suddenly. You wake up and a military junta has taken over your country, or some other kind of revolution has happened. If I can be heard still, give me a 1. I had something that kind of just blinked. If I can be heard, give me a 1. Okay, great. There's all kinds of stuff going on with this computer right now. Okay. Continuing on. But other times the climate shifts little by little. A few big gestures of aggression and then things settle down. Then the cycle repeats until one day the tipping point is reached and you find your democracy has been transformed into an autocracy. We're at serious risk of this happening in America. Trump's first 100 days have been a lesson for him in what he can and cannot easily do. He's followed the authoritarian playbook in attacking those sectors. Okay, give me 1 second. So he's followed the authoritarian playbook in attacking those sectors of society that uphold the value of evidence, the judiciary, the press, researchers. He's purged the bureaucracy, hired family members who thumbed their noses at conflicts of interest, bullied critics on Twitter, and incited a climate of hatred toward targeted groups, Muslims, Latinos, immigrants, and more. And M70 just showed us how there's an escalation in lynchings that are taking place, right? So many of those attacks have been successfully thwarted thus far. Trump has faced significant and sustained pushback to his programs and methods, including cherished measures like the travel ban and repealing and replacing Obamacare, from the press and the judiciary, and even by factions of his own party. Civic engagement and political activism have also grown exponentially in response to the dangers to our freedoms that he represents, as has funding and support for investigative journalism. Authoritarians, however, are most dangerous at such moments when they feel vulnerable. With the Trump-Russia scandal widening, we can expect the White House to become much more aggressive in imposing its agendas. Non-whites will bear the brunt of this under the guise of crackdowns on immigration, crime, and drugs, just like you were talking about, I believe, Brother Marcus, that was you speaking on that. Certainly drugs are a flashpoint of late because of President Trump's invitation to his counterpart in the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte. Okay, and if you don't know what's going on in the Philippines on these extrajudicial, just like mass murdering of people who are suspected drug dealers or even drug addicts, I mean, I believe it was posted here. M70 posted it, but they're having a widespread just murder spree of the police killing people left and right. Okay? These are the regime's extrajudicial killings, and his war on drugs and other human rights abuses have made him notorious as a visitor of the White House nonetheless. Political change announced itself formally with the blitz of executive orders that followed President Donald Trump's January 2017 inauguration. Kellyanne Conway's tweet from the period remains all too relevant. Get used to it. POTUS is a man of action and impact. Promises made, promises kept, shock to the system. And he's just getting started. We should be ready for another round of such shocks. Trump's been sending signals that he's preparing to accelerate his consolidation of personal power. In an interview Friday with Fox News, Trump criticized the archaic rules of the House and Senate. Now, listen, he's challenging the constitutionality of this country. Okay, and we know it's already eviscerated and shredded, but listen to what this is about to tell us, okay? He said that maybe at some point we're going to have to take these rules on because for the good of the nation, things are going to have to be different. According to what and who and why, right? This is like saying the Torah is no longer relevant. And this is what it talks about in Daniel 7 verse 25 of this fourth beast, who is pretty much the personification in Donald Trump. He's the personification of this fourth beast in every which way you can imagine. Okay, so you got to see how this is all unfolding. Continuing on. His attitude toward filibusters received the most press, but in discussing the bad concepts under the current archaic system, he also mentioned voting. Perhaps Trump meant voting procedures in the Senate. Here, as so often, he's evasive. In any case, his questioning of a main index of democracy, allowing our elected representatives to cast votes on our behalf, should be the front page news. But of course, it's nowhere found. Like many demagogues before him, Trump bills himself as a modernizer who can repair a broken system. Apparently, checks and balances are in the same category for him as old bridges and leaky borders, things that need fixing to work efficiently. Ian Bassine, a former White House Associate Counsel and Executive Director of United to Protect Democracy, a watchdog organization led by former White House and administration lawyers and constitutional litigators, noted to me that if Trump isn't content with upending democratic norms and starts to change their underlying laws, there's no end to how much power he could try to amass. But the crazy thing is, when you go back and you really analyze the predecessors to this office that he now sits, you can see how they set up for this perfectly. All of the legislation that they passed, all of the executive orders that they put into place, all of these presidential powers that have been completely pushed to the next level with each president is set up for this. And if you see what I'm saying and agree with that, please give me a 2, because this is what we have to see. This is all a part of a process in order to bring forth a new world order. And this is what is taking place, all right? Continuing on. Many might ask, wouldn't government run better in a more streamlined manner, allowing Trump to manage by decree as he does in his business life? This is what fiat means. He runs this country by fiat. This is again by a word, declaration, by the word spoken, okay? And this is what Yah does, and this is what he's trying to do. He's trying to get to a place of divinity. And I had a offering a while ago called The Apotheosis of Donald Trump and the Rise of the Fourth Reich. This is what this is about. This is deifying this man. They're making him into a Caesar, even though they're already a Caesar in a sense, representative, because the true power is behind that. But we need to understand this figurehead, okay? Continuing, a supporter interviewed by the Washington Post at his Harrisburg, Pennsylvania rally thinks so. I wish we had no parties. They just lock into the left or right and nothing gets done. Trump wants to fix stuff. It's a common theme heard among Trump's followers. Just let him come in and run things like a business. Because it is. It's a corporation. Federal corporation. But there's a name for a system with no parties and a strongman leader at the helm. Dictatorship. And this is what we've seen as Israelites for many generations. For the past four ascents, as they call them. Okay? The four ascents are Babylon, dictatorship; Persia, dictatorship; Greece, dictatorship; Rome, dictatorship. We've seen this. We're all too acquainted and familiar with this. So what is our response? How do we respond? What do we do? And we'll get to that shortly. As for Trump's other main targets, his staunch ally, the National Rifle Association head Wayne Lane Pierre, summed them up well. Yep. Zakane Jonas says, and you all think the land of Israel is defiled, yet you see this red horseman, or houseman, I think, is pouncing like a madman on your head here in this country of mass defilement and think it's all good. How dumb can you be? Get out, Zakane Jonas says. But this person, again, Wayne LaPierre, summed up the NRA's leadership forum in which the President Trump also spoke, saying, quote, academic elites, political elites, and media elites are America's greatest domestic threats. This weekend, while that's end quote, by the way, this weekend, while the media celebrated its resilience at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, the White House, according to Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, has looked at how to change constitutional law to restrict press freedoms. Trump didn't even attend the Correspondents' Dinner at all. Okay, so talk about changing liberal laws is another ominous sign of Trump's aspiration to strongman status. Authoritarians are often ungenerous people, but they do give us one gift. They tell us, they speak out of their mouth what they are going to do before they do it, both as an intimidation and as a challenge. Trump always follows this rule. At his weekend rally, listen to this. This is what I'm talking about. Remember that snake, okay? He recited the lyrics of a song by Al Wilson about a woman who rescues an ailing snake, only to find that as soon as the snake feels better, he bites her. When she protests, he grins and says, oh, shut up. You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in. Like the woman who helped the snake, we have been warned. Democracy dies not only in darkness, but also with advance notice, in clear view. Trump's letting us know that he intends to act. It's up to all of us as the true guardians of the galaxy to make sure he is not successful. Now we know there are certain things that must come to pass, as Yahushua told us. Some things must certainly come to pass. But we also have to be vigilant. We also have the right to be defenders of humanity and of the kingdom. And any threat to the kingdom is something, as Yah's chosen, that we must find ways to put down. Our ancestors were very vigilant in their vigilance to thwart any tyrannical system that came to attempt to colonize them, even in their defeat at times. So even when you look at like the A's with Bar Kosiba, as Moray M70 pointed out, they were not just laying down. Okay? And so we need to understand what our role is and how to go about doing that. And this article from Forward, I do believe, provides us with some interesting insights. So when you access this article, which is entitled Donald Trump, Read the Bible, You Are Not Above the Law, by Jane Eisner. Well, very interesting article. When you get this, please give me a 4 in acknowledgement of your receipt. All right. So no, the Tuesday afternoon massacre is not quite the same as a Saturday night massacre. Comey Gate isn't Watergate. Donald Trump isn't Richard Nixon. And America is not suddenly embroiled in a constitutional crisis. So far, thank goodness, the Constitution seems to be okay, but we know it's not. We know nothing is okay in this world, especially when it's not founded on the rock. But the stunning dismissal of FBI Director James Comey, should send chills up the spine of every citizen, not only because of what it is, an arrogant abuse of presidential prerogative, because he was about to start investigating Trump, okay? That's what it was for. But because of what it could portend, what sign it portends. If the ill-fated American military adventure in Iraq proved that we still hadn't learned the lesson of Vietnam, the Trump White House has demonstrated that it flunked Watergate history. Where did it go? It just kind of jumped around. I think I got an article that came up. Give me 1 second. I had this pop up come up on this advertisement. Don't know where it came from. All right. It flunked Watergate history class. Hell, it hasn't even cracked open the textbook. The lesson from Watergate that I retained from my youth was powerful. The president is not above the law. The rules of justice apply to everyone. The resolution of Watergate, with its painful but peaceful transference of power upon the resignation of the president, so far unique in our history, affirmed that our system of government could withstand any assault, even one lodged in furtive, corrupt conversations in the Oval Office. The law of the Constitution, we know, because Yah's law is perfect. It says that in Psalm 19. But this law isn't perfect by any means, but it aspires to be neutral and is dependent on being respected and followed. Justice, Zadech, you shall pursue. Justice you shall pursue, it says in Deuteronomy 16, nicely summing up the point. We are to pursue justice, not stand in its way. Perhaps the Jewish members of the Trump family and administration can teach the president from the original text, so nothing will get lost in translation. And we know that Jared Kushner ain't going to say nothing about it because he's corrupt within. And that's why I wanted to bring Leviticus 22 out. These people are corrupted from within. Their defilement it may not be external, but their defilement is within them, which is why all of this is taking place. All right, this is what we know. It says, Yahushua says, it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, it's what comes out. And we know what is coming out of these men. All right, and this is why we have to be all the more pure. We have to be all the more set apart or holy, as Moray said, so we can have that point of interaction with Yah, so we can receive that Shekinah, so the messengers can fight with and for us, the angels. Because this is what this comes down to. We read that a couple of weeks ago, dealing with the laws of Zara'at and how purity, ritual purity, moral purity is crucial in our fight against the darkness. So Trump has within his constitutional authority to jettison Comey for any reason. And the former FBI director's questionable handling of his agency's investigation to Hillary Clinton's emails might have been a fire-worthy offense. But we know that wasn't the case. But to those incidents were so last year, and it beggars belief for an administration so supportive of Comey's actions around Clinton's emails to suddenly trot out that rationale now, when Comey's bureau is knee-deep into investigating possible collusion between hostile foreign power, that would be Russia, despite the bonhomie of Wednesday's meeting, and Trump's associates. So this is why he's really gone, because they were about to start investigating this, okay? And so you can see in the wings, probably waiting for this bid to get put into the new position, is a very close friend of Donald Trump, all right? And if you don't see the prospects of Rudy Giuliani coming into this position of FBI head, well, it wouldn't be a surprise, to put it that way. You know, it could be someone else, but good old Rudy, quote unquote, he could be a very, very potential candidate to fulfill this position that has now been vacated because Trump wanted to bring the Apprentice show to the White House and fire all these people. So the president himself, contradicting all White House surrogates, said yesterday that the Russia thing was on his mind. No president since Watergate has dismissed the person leading an investigation bearing on him, though surely some have been tempted. Bill Clinton was the only other modern president to fire an FBI director, but that was for William Sessions' ethical lapses, and Sessions was replaced by a successor who became a real headache for the White House, during the Monica Lewinsky scandal. She's an operative too. Please understand. We read that a couple weeks ago as well. George W. Bush also tussled with his FBI chief, but neither president or their predecessors or successors risked the political backlash he would have incurred if he had given into his darker impulses and behaved the way that Trump did. Because they knew that justice, blind as possible, needed to be pursued. That is why after Watergate, the term of the FBI director was set to 10 years to specifically insulate him or her from the vagaries of a president's term in office, which cannot exceed 2 consecutive 4-year terms. So though Trump was technically within his right to fire Comey, he violated accepted norms in doing so. These norms aren't simple niceties, nor are they there to satisfy someone else's idea of political correctness. They are behaviors designed to reinforce the legal structure, expressing the need for the executive to remain distant from and appear uninvolved in the process of justice. And this is what takes place with this apotheosis, this deification process. The ruler becomes above the law. In fact, he becomes the law. Okay? And this is how extrajudicial murders and killings really take root. So we're going to start seeing a lot of crazy stuff. Not that we haven't already seen so, but it's going to get a lot more crazy. All right. So had this been an isolated incident, there would be less cause for concern. But Trump, as a candidate and now as a president, has consistently denigrated the rule of law, those who create it and those who administer it. He repeatedly boasts of being beyond its reach, and to some degree, he's right. His tax returns remain a mystery. His family businesses continue to trade on this position. There's the rule of law, and then there's Trump's law. And somehow, many of his supporters think it's just grand that the president doesn't play by the rules, willfully ignoring the fact that the rules are there to protect them. Indeed, all of us. The other lesson of Watergate was, of course, that our democratic institutions, especially Congress and the media, were the essential check on Nixon's abuse of power, exposing, interrogating, and prosecuting. Even as Nixon sought to pervert justice, they pursued it. The same must happen today to prevent this political crisis from turning into a constitutional one. And best believe it will, because it has to be eviscerated, it has to be shredded, it has to be absolutely removed in order for the new world, the new secular order to come about. So this is all part and parcel. Last paragraph. There is one person who can make it happen. Luckily, he happens to be a Jewish guy. Well, we know that that's not going to happen. We know the only person that can make that happen is Israel unified. All right. So we join a growing chorus calling on Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein to do the right thing and appoint a special counsel independent of the White House to properly and scrupulously investigate this administration. There is no time to lose. To quote another Jewish text, Pirkei Avot, known as the Ethics of the Fathers, the sword comes into the world because of justice delayed and justice denied. The president will learn that lesson one way or another. If we are the true guardians of the galaxy, we must be engaged in this. We must be seeking to bring forth a new reality. Okay? But not only is this man uttering these decrees and bringing forth challenges to the very social structure and the legal structure of the country he's a part of, well, we got some other people that are also doing very similar things as well. This next article comes to us from Breaking News Israel. We're looking at decrees. We're looking at the uttering of words. So when you access this article here, which comes to us from Breaking News Israel, in fact, our next 2 articles are going to come to us from Breaking News Israel. Please give me a 4 when you access this article. Okay. The name of this article is entitled End of Days Prophecy Describes Erdogan Leading Ishmael to Final War for Jerusalem. This was printed on May 11th by Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. When you access this, Bavakashah and Toda Rabbah to Marcus and Lisa and Born to Become Hebrew. And Shabbat Shalom to any and all who've recently entered into the room. But please give me a 4 in acknowledgement of your receipt of this article. Quoting 2 Chronicles 20 and verse 15. And he said, hearken ye all Yehuda, and ye inhabitants of Jerusalem, and thou King Jehoshaphat. Give me 1 second. Pop up came up. Thus says Yah unto you, fear not ye, neither be dismayed by this reason of this great multitude. For the battle is not yours, but Yah's. You can see in this painting the battle of Montisgrad for Jerusalem in 1177 during the Crusades. All right, and you see who's there. They've well kicked us out the land at that time. We've been exiled for a long time now. Okay, and so you see that these heathens have positioned themselves in our land and call themselves the guardians of the holiest land on earth. This week, Turkey's president Recep Tayyip Erdogan established himself as a leader in the end of days by calling, there's Emot again, that's speaking for the Islam to unite for Jerusalem. Erdogan's perplexing statement could be the cry that rallies the world of Ishmael for the prophesied third and final battle of Jerusalem preceding Mashiach. On Monday, at the opening ceremony of the International Forum on Al-Quds Waqf's Islamic Trust in Istanbul, Erdogan called for hundreds of thousands of Muslims to ascend to the Temple Mount, thundering, each day that Jerusalem is under occupation is an insult to us. So here comes now this other beast. Okay? We got to see the beast in all of its dimensions. Okay? These unclean spirits coming out this frog's mouth. Continuing on. Rabbi Berger, rabbi of the tomb of King David on Mount Sion, believes that Erdogan's call to Muslims was based in Jewish prophecy that predates Islam. Erdogan is fulfilling a prophecy as the leader of his country. Now we know that Persia or Iran and Turkey and this whole area, the Ottoman Empire area, is going to play a significant role in the end of days. All right. So Rabbi Berger told Israel breaking Israel News, just like the Pharaoh of Egypt. The rabbi related a prophecy written in Perkei de Rebbe Eliezer, a collection of biblical exegesis believed to have been compiled in the 7th century. He explained that according to the prophecy, the sons of Ishmael, which the rabbi identifies as Islam, will wage a war against Edom, which the rabbi identifies as Christianity. After this war, the sons of Ishmael will wage 3 wars against the Jews focused around Jerusalem. Rabbi Ishmael, the high priest, said 3 wars of turmoil the sons of Ishmael are destined to wage in Israel in the end of days. The prophecy reads, citing a verse in Isaiah, quote, "For they fled away from the swords, from the drawn sword, and from the bent bow, and from the grievous war." That's from Isaiah 21:15. The prophecy continues, and from there the Messiah from the house of David will grow, and he will witness their destruction, and then he will come to Israel. Wow, powerful. Rabbi Berger explains how the prophecy written hundreds of years before Muhammad founded Islam related to current events. The war between Islam and Christianity has been going on for some time now, in Europe and in America. Rabbi Berger said, now not to mention that the Edomite power, because you can't ignore the fact that Esau is also included in the Islamic tradition, okay? Because when you know where Esau is, he's also into the Jewish tradition, but he is also in the Christian tradition. This Edomite, Ishmaelite, because you got to keep in mind, these nations, according to Psalm 83, are confederate. So let's not be beguiled by what this article is really saying, because these kingdoms, these peoples are confederated with one another to remove Israel. So this is what this is really about. Okay, and if you see that point, what's being said, because they're trying to pit these two countries against each other, and you can't deny that Islam and Christendom right now are having some feuds, and some disputes and everything. But ultimately, we know this is about truly attacking Israel and removing Israel from the face of the earth. Please type 1 if you agree. If you don't agree, type in a 0, and we can just keep it moving. But this is what this is really coming down to. All right. Selah. Let's continue this article. So they say that this war again between Islam and Christendom has been going on for some time now in Europe and America. Rabbi Berger said he identified the two intifadas Israel has suffered, the first from 87 to 93 and the second from 2000 to 2005, as the first two wars to which the prophecy refers. Erdogan has just declared the third and final war for Jerusalem as foretold by prophecy, Berger said. So he noted that while Erdogan might not seem the natural Arab leader to unite the Muslims, he had touched on a universal message in targeting Jerusalem, which would, in a sense, activate the need to fulfill the prophecy. The world of Islam is fighting among itself, and Erdogan is not a major Islamic leader, said Berger. But his call to unite in the fight for Jerusalem will resonate among the Muslims because it is the call they have been waiting for. It is written in their soul. So much so that even the Palladian right is aware of this, because they understand that the agent provocateurs of the Mohammedans will rise up against the agent provocateur of the Zionist movement. So this is what this is coming down. But the deep thing is that all these characters really have nothing to do about the land. They're just clearers of the way. These battles have to take place. These birth pains have to take place in order to give birth to the actual children of the Most High. So they're actually just kind of leveling the ground, if you will. Okay. So the Islamic war for Jerusalem was also predicted in the Zohar, the foundational work of Jewish mysticism. It is written in the Zohar that in the sixth cycle of 1,000 years, there will be a spiritual process of 70 days. We know this also refers to the 70 weeks, okay, which will return the Torah to Moses. After that, a great cry will go up to Elohim from Israel, from the righteous, or from the suffering. The Zohar then predicts a multinational war for Jerusalem led by Islam, basing this prophecy on a verse in the final chapter of Zechariah. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, but the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Professor Zeev Megan of the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies explained that Turkey has a powerful political interest in Jerusalem as well, which relates to the historic ties between the two regions. And here comes the Ottoman Empire. This is where it comes right back to that. It should be remembered that Erdogan inherited the title of leader of the Ottoman Empire, which ruled over Jerusalem and its holy places prior to World War I, politically and religiously for 400 years. Dr. Megan told Breaking Israel News, Erdogan is, after all, an Islamist, and Jerusalem is the third holiest city in Islam. The third holiest. And to us, it is none other than the holiest. Okay? And this is why we have a significant role in being guardians of this reality as well. So since Saudi Arabia, as the leader of Sunni Wahhabism, rules over the holy city of Mecca, it is only natural that a call to war would focus on Jerusalem, said Dr. Megan. For that reason, Iran has a Jerusalem Day. Iran instituted Quds Day in 1979, an annual holiday held on the last day of the Ramadan period of fasting. It was intended to be in direct opposition to Israel's celebration of Jerusalem Day. At its inception, the Ayatollah Khomeini, the spiritual leader of Iran, declared the liberation of Jerusalem a religious duty to all Muslims. Essentially, Dr. Megan concluded, Erdogan's call for Islam to unify in the fight for Jerusalem dates back to Suleiman the Magnificent, leading to the 200-year battle against the Christian Crusades. And that is after he came to acknowledge that the Islamic world has power of their own. We don't need the Vatican to tell us what to do. We have our own power. Now that I'm looking at this in a different light, so that war was initially to be spawned against Israel. The Islamists were raised up to be a buffer between the Catholic Vatican and the Israelites. But when the Muslims realize, man, we're powerful in our own right, well, let's just break off from these Catholics and do our own thing. All right? Because if you look at a lot of the different commonalities that are present with them, it is amazing. Not only in the appearance, from the nuns' dress to the sisters, the Muslimina clothing and attire, the head covering, so on and so forth. There's so many commonalities between Islam and Catholicism that is amazing. But let me get this next article from Breaking Israel News up as well, as soon as my computer wants to cooperate with me. But I hope you all are finding yourselves stimulated here. Again, we're dealing with Parashat Emot. The name of this offering is entitled Speak Truth to Power. All right, I think I'm getting it now. Yes. And so we're dealing with the idea of speaking and declaring and decreeing and the fiat matter of these despots and these tyrants. What Erdogan has done is called for all Muslims to rally around Jerusalem. What Trump is doing is now rallying his Reich around his tyrannical strongman leadership capacities. And so we're seeing all of this play out before our eyes in a very prophetic manner. And we're dealing with a new age, if you will, of spiritual darkness and degeneracy. All right. Let me get this next article to you. Give me just one moment, Bavakashah. Another decree. Now we're dealing. So we dealt with Islam. We dealt with Christendom. Now we're going to deal with Judaism and Zionism. So give me 1 second as this, for some reason, doesn't want to load. Let me see if I can get it. Which one is this? That's not it. Okay. All right. I'm having just a few technical difficulties again. This computer just now wants to start acting crazy. Let's see if I can get this going. This is just unbelievable. I had everything lined up before, and now it just like shut down, and so I'm dealing with some very frustrating technical difficulties. But Bakashah, just give me one moment. All right, I think I got it now. Let's see. That's probably what it is, huh? That's still not it. I think this is it. I hope this is it. Nope, still not it. This is unbelievable. All right. Coming shortly. We're getting this together. I'm going to get this working out. I'm going to make it work out. One way, shape, form, or fashion. We're going to work it out. But I pray this finds each and every one of you on good spirits and good health. We've been having a very eventful and insightful day. Moram 70's offering of can morality further our cause or help our cause was truly a very stimulating presentation and offering that he provided us with, dealing with some of the similar questions and issues that I'm dealing with in terms of the corruption and moral degeneracy of these world leaders. And so as we're dealing with these matters, we're juxtaposing the differences that exist between righteous servants of the Most High and wicked servants of course, none other than Satan. As most of these people, as we will see in a few articles, are cynically led to go about doing matters as opposed to really serving for the sake of furthering humanity and allowing humanity to become its fulfillment, which is nothing more than the reflection of the Most High, who is our Elohim, Yah, El Elyon, the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So, just trying to get this reel up to you here. This next news reel, this next article, excuse me. Having just a few challenges. Yeah, I can see that, Zakan Yona. If I probably definitely need to upgrade my memory, even maybe get a new laptop. Just can't afford it right now with so much going on. And so I deal with what I can. All right, let's see. Yep, laptop. I don't have a desktop.
That's pretty good.
That's loud, man. Oh, man, come on. Yahoo don't want to act right. Let's see. This whole computer don't want to act right now. No, Mo. That's why I'm on the microphone. All right. Just give me a few moments. Let me get this situated. All right. Let's see. White noise. I apologize for. Well, my mom. I'll get in contact with you after the class after Shabbat, the Kenyona, and see what's up. All right. Let's see. I think I can get this going now. Yeah, I'll contact you after the class, okay? You'll know. We'll go from there. All right. This thing is just very deliberate right now. That is truth. We gotta look out for one another. We all we got. We all we got. Let's see if I can get this to copy now. Thank you all for your patience and waiting for me to get this technology matter situated. Come on. Oh, buddy. Thanks, Mo.
No problem. Tell them all that I love them.
They can hear you.
Oh.
Mo says he loves you guys. Shalom, shalom, Shabbat shalom. All right. I think this is it here. Hopefully this is it. Not yet. Unbelievable. You went upstairs. Okay, is that it? That's it. Oh my goodness, it took all that for that. All right, here we go. This is it here. When you access this article, please give me a 4. Hopefully I can access it. And then we can go together with it. This also comes to us from Breaking Israel News. We're dealing with a major decree now by the Zionist Sanhedrin. And they want to reestablish Jerusalem's borders. Very interesting article. That the Sanhedrin, they're calling themselves Beit Din, the house of judgment. They have the audacity to proclaim this. And they're going to say that they're wanting to revive a 2,000-year-old temple, a Herodian temple. Or maybe, as Moray 70 said, a Hadrian temple. As my article's coming up. And then after they revive the temple, they want to fulfill this rite and then reestablish the borders of what they call Old Jerusalem. So just give me a second as my article loads here. As Elder Judas says, there's no temple. There is no temple. This again is by Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. He wrote this on May 9th this year. Sanhedrin establishes Jerusalem's biblical borders in ceremony last performed by the prophet Nehemiah. He says, but if you return unto me and keep my commandments and do them, though your dispersed were in the uttermost part of the heaven, yet I will gather them from thence and will bring them unto that place that I have chosen to cause my name to dwell there. Nehemiah 1:9. On the day after the Feast of Shavuot, the Sanhedrin will reenact a ceremony officially establishing the borders of Jerusalem for purposes of reinstating the temple service. So here you have on one hand, Erdogan calling for all Muslims to come and reclaim Jerusalem. And on the other hand, you have this group calling itself the Sanhedrin calling for reestablishing the borders of Jerusalem for the purpose of reinstating a temple service. Can you say conflict of the ages is on the precipice? So we need to understand this, okay? This last performed by Nehemiah in the 6th century BCE. This was the final step before beginning the sacrifices, but today it is also meant as a powerful and timely political statement. Rabbi Hillel Weiss, spokesman for the nascent, listen to that, the nascent Sanhedrin. They're nascent people. They don't really have any authority, but this is what they're doing. They're calling for this, which lets us know what we need to be doing. If they have an organization or a group of people together who are calling themselves a Sanhedrin, my question again, and I've asked this before, where is ours? Do we have a court that we can bring matters to when we have disputes with one another? Or are we always reliant on our enemies' courts? You see what I'm saying? This is what we need to understand. This is what this is for. To maintain order in our society. But this nascent Sanhedrin is saying that establishing these borders is perhaps the final step in reinstating the temple service, noting that directly after Nehemiah reestablished the boundaries of Jerusalem, the sacrifices began. The only thing lacking today to begin bringing sacrifices is the altar, Rabbi Weiss explained to Breaking Israel News. When that is ready, we will need to have these borders firmly established. These people are looking at this, as Uzziah likes to use regularly, exactly, Elder, but carnally. They're looking at this carnally, and this is nothing more than a direct war against Mashiach, Yahushua, and us as the body of Mashiach. Sacrifices that are required to be eaten in Jerusalem, such as peace offerings, the first fruits, and the Paschal lamb, must be eaten inside the boundaries of the city. Uh-oh. So you're telling me, I'm going here with it too. You're telling me that, what's his name? Is it Yehoshua? No, excuse me, Hoshua in Tel Arad, kissing this lamb in Tel Arad, and then killing this lamb in Tel Arad, and he's been doing it for years now, is in violation with Torah, because this must be done within the boundaries of the holy city. There's no altar, so where are you offering your lamb at? And these are things that we need to think about critically and deal with properly, according to Torah, not according to what we feel, not according to what we believe. They look wild, huh? He looked like Azazel. They've done that for years. This is crazy. But establishing these boundaries designates the area of holiness. Now, we know that according to Zechariah, all of Jerusalem is going to be holy, and every dish in the city will be holy. And this is what we need to understand. This is our prerogative. We have to go about making this a reality. Okay, this is what we have to do. Rabbi Weiss explained that according to the Torah law, an acquisition of land must be accompanied by a physical act. A person who purchases or inherits the land must walk the borders or have a meal on the land. In 3 weeks, on the day after the Feast of Shavuot, the Sanhedrin will mark points along the border and attempt to walk as much of it as possible. Exactly. And we talked about that last week, how the atoning sacrifice of Mashiach radically and fundamentally changed everything. And it shifted the focus from, as Yahushua said, they won't be on this mountain, nor in this temple, but it refers exactly to us. Okay? So, they are still in the process of receiving permission from the Jerusalem police, but in the past, many temple-oriented activities have been delayed or diverted due to police restrictions. Rabbi Weiss admitted that the move had a strong political motive. Jerusalem's Jubilee, listen to this, is the time to reestablish the holiness of Jerusalem, Rabbi Weiss explained, referring to the upcoming 50th anniversary of the unification of Jerusalem during the 6-Day War. Okay, and we know it very much so, Elder. It's very much a war on Yahushua and Yah. President Trump is coming on his first official visit. Wow. We have to make clear to him, as a leader of a nation friendly to Israel, that the eternal Jewish city or capital is once again ready to fulfill its biblical role. Now, this is what these devils are saying, people. Listen to what they're saying. This is also in direct response to the absurd UNESCO proclamations, which come to prevent the Jews from performing their biblically mandated purpose. Last Tuesday, on Israel's 69th Independence Day, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organizations Executive Board passed a resolution in Paris declaring Jewish sovereignty in all of Jerusalem to be illegal because you're not the people. Okay, this is why they declared that. They have a spiritual understanding without perhaps even understanding what they've just done with this declaration. Because we have to make that declaration. No matter what man says, we don't have to worry about what they say. What we have to worry about is Yah's, what's the word I'm looking for? His witness of the matter. Their witness, their legal testimony is irrelevant. We need Yah's testimony. That's what we're looking for. So the resolution declared the Jerusalem law, designating the city as Israel's capital and passed by the Knesset in 1980 to be null and void. The resolution expanded on previous UNESCO resolutions, which ceded a religious monopoly over the Temple Mount to Islam. Very much so, Elder. It's all the powers of darkness which are operating on earth and at the cosmic level as well. But we have to counter these. We have to be the guardians of the galaxy and go against what may even be seemingly insurmountable odds at times. But as the first step in the process of establishing borders for Jerusalem, listen to this, because there's wisdom in this as well. As the first step in the process of establishing for Jerusalem in the third temple, and we've already shown that there's been 3 temples already, the Sanhedrin heard the testimony of Dr. Daniel Michelson, a professor from the Weizmann Institute who has made an exhaustive study concerning the borders of Jerusalem and the second temple as established by Nehemiah. Where are our exhaustive studies with these matters at? Where are our scholars? Where are our institutions? Where are our people who are devoted to this reality of making Israel and Jerusalem the capital of heaven on earth? Where are our people at? Now, I know this room, yeah, but we need to be engaged in this. And this is what was talking about earlier from the first article, the activism. We need to be directly engaged in this. This is a direct, and I mean democratic in the sense of the people being involved in the theocratic reality of bringing forth this kingdom. All right? This is what we need to be involved in. So in order to begin offering sacrifices, Nehemiah rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem based on the borders of the first temple established by King Solomon and King David. The remains of these walls were discovered by archaeologists Bliss and Dickey in the 1890s. Rabbi Michelson said, based his measurements and maps on their findings and on detailed descriptions in chapter 3 in the book of Nehemiah. So he built the wall, and the wall was joined together into the half the height thereof, for the people had a mind to work. Where is your mind? Is your mind to work? This is what we need to be doing. After designating the borders, the Sanhedrin will reenact Nehemiah's Thanksgiving offering of 20 loaves of bread. The Sanhedrin also began deliberations on establishing the borders of Jerusalem for the third temple. Again, their misunderstanding. Though the Sanhedrin has yet to come to a consensus about the precise boundaries, the borders of Jerusalem in the third temple would be substantially larger than those in the time of the second temple, according to Professor Michelson. His study, based on descriptions in the book of Ezekiel, the boundaries of Jerusalem for the purposes of the temple would be over 7 miles on each side. The Sanhedrin will perform a conditional acquisition so that when the sacrifices are renewed in the third temple, the acquisition will take place. Selah. Very, very, very stimulating and interesting article, and looking at the developments that are taking place right before our very faces. If you knew that that was going on, please type a 1. If you did not know that that was going on, type in a 0. Because these are things that we have to be aware of and understand prophetically that are taking place, and what our enemies and our adversaries are about, what they're engaging in, what their goals are, what their agenda is. Because if we don't have a clear-cut agenda, well, we're just going with the wind. We have to be engaged in this. Very, very engaged in this. Yep. You have to be. Elder ICL just posted the Times of Israel article about the first Passover sacrifice to take place in the Old City. And I do believe that took place last year, if I'm not mistaken, where the Temple Institute reenacted a sacrifice. That was this year. So this is the second year that they've done so. Very interesting. Toda Rabbah. We can look at that shortly. I want to continue and finish up some things that I had here, because that's a very significant article. Yep, all that while Israel sleep. Ain't even thinking about the land by and large. While our enemies are completely looking to just take over everything. the Arabs, the Muslims are intent on reclaiming Jerusalem. The Zionists are intent on possessing Jerusalem. The Christians are intent on possessing Jerusalem. But here we are, not even looking, by and large, at Jerusalem. We thinking Jerusalem is some old metaphysical reality that doesn't have any geographic location. We think, oh, it's heaven. We gotta go to heaven. And sleeping on what Yah has promised us, on our inheritance, by and large. All right, I'm trying to get my next article together. Just give me one moment. I got 2 articles left, and then I will relinquish this. This next article comes to us. Dang it, stop doing that. It comes to us from a blog spot. There we go. This is a very interesting article by Alice Lindsay. And just give me a moment to pull it up myself. I gave it to you all first, so you all can also pull it up. But do give me a 4 when you access the article, Bavakashah. This is a very, very, very interesting article about Abraham and Isaac, and you can see in the address is dealing with Abraham and whether or not he believed Isaac was a Messiah. And this is dealing with the Passover lamb in some senses. Okay? What Abraham discovered on Mount Moriah. Okay, so this is a very, very interesting article. Do give me a 4 when you access that, as Elder Judah tells us again that we don't realize that without Jerusalem there can be no heaven for us, and that Jerusalem will be the intersection between heaven and earth. Very much so. And this is what Abraham partly discovered on Mount Moriah, which is Mount Zion. Okay? This is where the actual temple is to be. So was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered Isaac his son up upon the altar? See thou how faith wrought with his works, and by works was faith made perfect. And the scripture was fulfilled, which says, Abraham believed the Most High, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of Elohim. You see then how that by works a man is justified, and not by faith only. Now, we're going to deal with this article in a very interesting way, because it's going to really present some elements that many of you may not be familiar with. Many of you may actually be not agreeing with, but they're going to look at the principles of what this article is saying, because it's going to connect Israel to some very interesting people. But when you go back and you examine the historical record and see where Israel arose from, you're going to see that they were a part of this cultural milieu and this environment that surrounded them. So they had connections and understandings of these things. However, they were coming into a deeper revelation of what was unfolded before them by the Creator. Okay? So I want you all to please understand what this article is saying. Israel came from certain places and elements and certain beliefs that were prior to them, but they were honing and developing and being shown through revelation deeper realities. All right. So if you understand what I'm saying, please give me a 3 with that, because this is something that we need to see, and see how Israel actually came into the consciousness of Torah. It wasn't as if Israel, boom, had Torah from the jump. They had to develop a consciousness. Okay. So Abraham was a Horite Hebrew. Okay. He was from Ur of Chaldea. This is where the Horites were from. And these were African peoples. A devotee of Horus at one time, who was called the son of the creator Ra. The Horites were a ruler priest. Listen to this. A ruler priest caste that originated in the Nile Valley when the Sahara was wetter, when it was not a desert. The oldest site known where Horites practiced their religion is Nachin, a major city that stretched for 2 miles along the floodplain. Votive offerings at the temple of Horus were up to 10 times larger than the normal mace heads and bowls found elsewhere, suggesting that this was a very prestigious shrine. Horite priests placed invocations to Horus at the summit of the fortress as the sun rose. Now, somebody tell me, when they're saying Horus, who in the Sumerian religion, that's what Abraham was dealing with, okay, but this was all connected. Who in the Sumerian religion is Horus synonymous with or equivalent to? These are things that we need to understand. The priests were well aware of these things, and they were aware of them so that they could then demonstrate how Yah is supreme to these things. Who is Horus equivalent to in the Sumerian, or let me make it more clear, the Babylonian tradition? Horus is equivalent to who? Close. Tammuz. Okay, you're dealing with Nimrod being Osiris, Semiramis being Isis, and Tammuz being Horus. This is what we're dealing with. Okay? This is how all this really prefigures. This is the prefiguring of this, because there's many documents now that are showing that Egypt received many of their traditions from the Mesopotamian area, all right? But they are synonymous. These were just different cultural expressions of a similar religious phenomena, okay? If you understand what I'm saying there, give me a 1. These were different cultural expressions of similar religious phenomena, okay? And ideologies. Continuing on. By all appearances, now listen to this. This is a profound statement. By all appearances, and I'm going to call him Yahshua, is the fulfillment of the Horite expectation of the divine seed who would overcome death. The Horites believed that Ra would bring forth his son by the overshadowing of one of the virgin daughters. They lived in an expectation of the fulfillment of a promise made to their Edenic ancestors that a son or a seed would be born who would be their savior. Okay, that's from Genesis 3:15, the earliest pronouncement of the Messiah. Very much so, Elder Judah. There's even a book called The 13 Crucified Saviors, because this is what we need to understand. Before any scriptures were written, the scriptures were already revealed. And they were revealed in the constellations. Our people were stargazers. They understood time and the signs of the time and the seasons as well, according to their perception of the stars and their understanding of the stars and what the stories told according to those stars. How did they know the Messiah was born? How did they know that Moses was going to be born? How did they know that Abraham was going to be born? How did Benjamin find Joseph? They used the stars. The thing that separates Israel from the rest of the nations is Israel is not subject and does not worship the stars. We use the stars as servants to serve Yah. We serve Yah. But those stars and those moons and the sun are servants that we use to understand what Yah has given us. Continuing on, though. For the promise to Abraham and his offspring that he would be heir of the world did not come through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. As Abraham and Isaac ascended Mount Moriah, Isaac asked his father, we talked about this last week, where is the lamb for the sacrifice? Abraham replied that Yah would provide the lamb. This is building on what we touched last week. However, that is not what the Most High did. As the story goes, Elohim provided a ram, not a lamb, a ram caught in the thicket. To understand what this would have meant to Abraham, who was from a people where the ram was a major cultic symbol. We must be aware of his Horite beliefs concerning the expected righteous ruler who would die and overcome death by his death. They understood this even then. So Elohim provided a ram instead. For Abraham the Horite, the lamb was associated with the east and the rising of the sun. The ram was associated with the west and the setting sun and the future. This belief emerged from the solar imagery of the proto-gospel, which was found in the stars, as we just read. Horus, the son of Ra, was depicted as being one with the Father. He rode with the Father on the solar boat. The boat of the morning hours was called Manjet, and the boat of the evening hours was called Mesechet. While Horus was on the Mesechet, he was in his ram-headed form. Now, this is all the, what's the word I'm looking for? The totemic religions. Okay, when you're dealing with Kemet or Mitzrayim or Egypt, you're dealing with what is known as a totemic solar cult. Okay, they were a solar cult because they worshiped the sun, yes, but they were also a totemic cult. Okay, a totemic cult was using, like he just said, the falcon or the ram-headed form. Horus was also known to have a falcon head. Okay, and you see the body of a human with the head of an animal. Well, that's the totemism right there that you have to understand. Okay, this is really expressed in the book by Albert Churchward called The Origin and Evolution of Religion. All right, very interesting book. It puts a lot of things into perspective regarding how we got to where we are with religion. Okay, so the ram symbolized the Most High's acceptance of Abraham's offering at the moment, which is justification now, and the Most High's acceptance of Abraham at the eschaton, or the future justification. So both were accepted, not only then and there for Abraham, but also in the future there was going to be an acceptance of justification. Let me check this out. I'm going to look at this in a second. Excuse me. So, the ram caught on Mount Moriah symbolized to Abraham that his offering had been accepted because the lamb had become the ram in mature strength. This is why the lamb of Elohim had to be offered. He wasn't fully developed into the ram yet, or the lion, shall we call him. You see what I'm saying? There was a premature, not premature, but there was an earlier development that had to take place prior to the fulfilled reality of this messianic principle. Okay, that's why the lamb was offered up as opposed to the ram. Okay, Horus was the lamb in his weaker, kenotic existence, and he was the ram in his glorified strength. And this is where the lion comes into it again. Both are associated with the death and resurrection symbolism of the vernal equinox and with the messianic expectation of the Horite Hebrew. It appears that Abraham believed Isaac was the appointed son whose death would be overcome, but Isaac was spared when Elohim provided his own sacrifice. Abraham likely believed Isaac to be the son of promise, since circumstances surrounding Isaac's birth align with the ancient Horus myth. Consider why Abraham the Horite might have believed he was to offer Isaac up. 1. Isaac was born miraculously, as was Horus, but his miraculous birth wasn't something that was outside of biological functions. His birth was biologic in that Abraham and Sarah were blessed to receive a seed based on the profession of Gabriel, the messenger, in her old age. So, again, Isaac was miraculously born, as was Horus, who was said to have been conceived of a virgin when she was divinely overshadowed. Compare the angel's words to Mary in Luke 1:35. 2. As Abraham's heir, Isaac was honored as being one with his father. From pre-dynastic times, the creator was said to have a son, Horus. The father and son are inseparable and of one essence in the theology of Abraham's Horim. Horus knows the father, and the father knows the son. 3. Elohim named Isaac as the son by whom Abraham's seed would be called. His brother Ishmael was banished. Horus was exalted after being abused by his brother, who was banished. 4. Isaac was sacrificed by the father by faith and restored to life, since to Abraham he was already given up, which was the Holocaust. Horus was restored to life. This is why many ancient Egyptian funerary amulets were made in the shape of the Eye of Horus. 5. Isaac received the kingdom from his father. He received everything from Abraham. Horus receives the kingdom from Ra. In Horite belief, Horus and Ra are frequently interchangeable. I and my father are one, as Yahushua explained also in John 10 and verse 30. The father and son are inseparable and of one essence in the theology of Abraham's Horim. Horus knows the father and the father knows the son. This is expressed in the ancient Egyptian pyramid texts. In the priest's prayer to the king, he says Horus is a soul and he recognizes his father in you. 6. Isaac had 2 wives who lived in separate settlements with separate flocks. Together, these constituted his kingdom. They were practical reasons for this practice. In the event of attacks, Isaac's line, and I believe they were referring to Jacob, was more likely to survive if divided into 2 camps. This fear motivated Jacob to separate his 2 wives and their people into 2 groups when returning to Canaan. Likewise, Horus is said to have 2 land holdings, as evidenced by one of his titles, Harpaneb Ta'ui, which means Horus of the 2 lands. The Horus narrative speaks of how he unites the peoples of the upper and lower into one people. 7. The association of sheep with the son of Elohim is found in the Old and New Testaments. Horite priests kept herds from which they took the best to offer as sacrifices, which we're just reading about today. Yahushua comes from a long line of shepherds of the priestly lines on Joseph's side and Mary's side. Put that in your pocket because we're coming up on that with the next article, okay? Keeping sheep was not their only occupation, however. Some were metal workers, others were carpenters, but all were skilled in various enterprises. The rulers of Egypt kept flocks and acknowledged that Jacob's people were especially skilled shepherds. This is why Pharaoh asked Joseph to put the best of the shepherds of Jacob's clan in charge of the royal flocks. Yahushua, the good shepherd, speaks of having other sheep in another fold. Often the 2 folds are cast as dispensations, one consisting of those who live in faithful expectation of the Son of Elohim, and the other being the witnesses of his resurrection, the body. Together these comprise the kingdom of Elohim. They might be seen as the 2 wives of Messiah. The second wife was taken shortly before the rulers ascended to the throne. This puts the marriage feast of the Lamb into a new light. Selah. Very interesting. 8. The ruler priests among Abraham's people were shepherds. The signs of their authority were the shepherd's crook and flail. These emblems of royal authority have been found in pre-dynastic wall paintings. Nechan is the site of the most ancient Horite temple and city in Egypt. Of particular interest is the tomb painting of 2 men carrying crook staffs with objects that look like flails, suggesting that they might be ruler priests. Okay, so there's some sort of symmetry that we're seeing here. And I do believe at one time, this is what I believe, this region was actually unified in consciousness. Okay, and then there was a degradation. It became dark, chaotic and void. It became tohu wabohu. It became formless and void. It became this particular way. Prior to that, there may have been a all-pervasive consciousness amongst these peoples in the Levant region and even in the continent of Africa. So, just food for thought. 9. Yahushua is often portrayed as the Lamb, a tender image. In his resurrection victory, he is better portrayed as a ram, mighty in strength, mature, and ready to defend his flock. In the story of the binding of Isaac, the ram speaks of Elohim's self-sacrifice and would have been confirmation for Abraham that his offering was accepted. The acceptance was justification of Abraham by faith in what he expected Elohim to do in the future. 10. The ancient Egyptian pyramid texts provide a great deal of information about Horus, the son of Ra. The righteous rulers who were buried in the half-dozen pyramids in question hoped for bodily resurrection, and their hope rested in Horus, who was pierced in the side, died, and risen from the dead on the 3rd day. The expectation that the righteous son would not remain in the grave is expressed in Psalm 16:10. For thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, or Sheol, neither will thou suffer thine set-apart one, or holy one, to see corruption. The final enemy is death. Psalm 110, Yah says to my master, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. In coffin text, funerary prayers dating about 1,000 years before Psalm 110, we read in passage 48, I am Horus, the great falcon, upon the ramparts of the house of him of the hidden name. My flight has reached the horizon. I have passed by the gods of Nut. I have gone further than the gods of old. Even the most ancient bird could not equal my very first flight. I have removed my place beyond the powers of Set, the foe of my father Osiris. No other god could do what I have done. I have brought the ways of eternity to the twilight of the morning. I am unique in my flight. My wrath will be turned against the enemy of my father Osiris, and I will put him beneath my feet in the name of Red Cloak. Abraham knew to expect a son who would overcome death. He likely believed that Isaac would be raised to life after the sacrifice, and we read of that last week. In other words, he acted by faith. By provision of the ram on Mount Moriah, a site that was sacred to the Horites, Abraham received confirmation that his offering was accepted, and he also discovered that Isaac was not the anticipated ruler foretold in Eden, that one would be revealed in the future. Paul and James are perceived to be in conflict on the question of justification, yet they both argue based on this story of Abraham and Isaac. There is no conflict in their understandings of this event if they understood that Abraham trusted Elohim to confirm the truth to him. This is the man who posed the great question, will not the judge of all the earth do right? This same Abraham believed Elohim on a very deep level. Was not Abraham our father justified by faith when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar? See thou how faith wrought his works with his works, and by works was faith made perfect. And the scripture was fulfilled which saith, Abraham believed Elohim, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of Elohim. Ye see then how that by works a man is justified, and not by faith only. Selah. Very interesting article. And let me just say this, if you don't mind. The thing about what we just read, and some people may be confused, like, man, they're talking about Horus and the Egyptian stuff. You have to understand this. Israel was an evolutionary revelation of humanity that took spirituality and the traditions of the East, and I mean that including Africa, to the next level. Okay? Because this was the prior understanding and the predominant and the prevailing consciousness that had existed at that time. Okay? But what ended up taking place was a further revelation of the truth. And that was given through Israel, who have received the fullest revelation of what is known as Elohim consciousness. This is what Israel has done in the map of human history. They have discovered the true and living Elohim, because prior to that, they were dealing with fractals. Okay, they were dealing with fragments of the truth. No people had the Elohim of creation be revealed to them, except for Israel. And so when we're dealing with these other traditions, you have to understand this is their limited perception of the revelation of the fullness of the Most High. If you understand what I'm saying, please give me a 7. Because this is very vital information to perceive. Selah. Selah. Okay? Because Israel was revealed the light. Okay? They were shown the light. These other nations were shown things through other coasts. You cannot create an image for the light. This is why the third commandment is so deep, because it's like all these other nations were creating all these statues, these figures, these figurines, these idols, these symbols and things like that. Y'all was like, none of that for me. I'm showing you all the reality of this matter. And this is transcendent to anything that you have seen before. Because you've seen these things before. You come from these peoples, as a matter of fact. But I'm going to show you the reality. Okay? Now, as we have just read and dealt with these matters, what we have to understand are many, if not most of the articles that we read except the first two, are dealing with the corruption of the offerings that these men are bringing to their brothers and to their sisters and to humanity. It's corrupt because why? As we read in Leviticus 22, the corruption is within them. We need to be pure. We need to be holy so we can once again encounter Yah in time and space. Because as Moraim 70 said, Yah is beyond time and space. But the way that we encounter Yah in time and space is through holiness. And so this last article that I want to present is going to show how the corruption of the priesthood and the teachers of Israel were challenged by two particular groups. And the name of this article, based on reflections of Parashat Emot, is called Sadducees, Pharisees, Essenes, Messiah. You can see it kind of plays on that concept of lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, but this is Sadducees, Pharisees, Essenes, Messiah. That's what we're dealing with in this article. When you access this article, Bavakashah, give me a 4. This is a Hebrew Vision News exclusive. It is written by Mikael Corbin-Yahu, a.k.a. the End Time Scribe and Light of, again, Parashat Emot. It opens with 2 quotes. The first one is from the book Melchizedek and the Passover Lamb. So, Elder Asiel, the article that you sent, if you may want to present that as well. I don't want to steal your thunder, but you may want to come back and bring that to the forefront as far as that offering in Jerusalem that was made. But we're going to see how this does, again, factor into offerings, okay, and the Passover lamb. So Yeshua, or more accurately, as Rav Shaul calls him, Yahusha, in Aramaic was a unique name in Jewish society. What we do know is that the name Yahushua was a quite frequent name in first century Judea. The name is found in the lineages of King David and in the lineage of the high priest of the house of Zadok. And Zadok is in this week's Parashat, and we'll get to that. Even the name of the messianic prototype and successor to Moses, Joshua or Yahusha, was a foreshadowing of the name of the coming ruling Zadok, Melchizedek. This is the one that Abraham thought Isaac was to be, but he was shown differently. That is a future incarnation or a future birth that will come from your loins. The name of Yahusha was relatively common as the name of the high priest of Israel, actually. It was a common name of the high priest of Israel. There were a total of 5 high priests that were named Yahusha. It seems Yah was trying to tell us something of the eternal high priest who would serve him. And again, this is from chapter 1 from Rav Shaul's book, Melchizedek and the Passover Lamb. But the priests, the Levites, the sons of Zadok, who guarded the duty of my set-apart place when the children of Israel went astray from me, they shall draw near to me to serve me, and shall stand before me to bring me the fat and the blood, declares the Master Yah. This is Ezekiel 44:15. With this week's Parashat Emot, we continue to be informed by the Torah of the priestly standards of holiness, sacrificial duties, as well as the national cultic observances and practices which make up the religious calendar of appointed times, collectively called Moedim in Hebrew. Commentators have noted that the word emor, which means to say or speak, is used twice in the opening passage of this reading, suggesting an emphasis to be brought to both the priesthoods and the reader's attention. The intention of this literary device is to have the target audience made duly aware of the laws of sanctity. So morality is crucial, Moray 70, but to make the people duly aware of the laws of sanctity, which if broken would disqualify a priest from being able to officiate in his capacities as temple administrator. On a wider scale, though this principle was strictly to be observed by the priesthood for the further purpose of facilitating the process by which the nation would become a set-apart people unto Yah, these standards also applied to the entire nation. For it is as such that when this mission is fulfilled by both the priests and the people, as we have mentioned on several occasions in our writings, it then becomes possible for the Shekinah of Yah to become manifest within and upon the entire nation of Israel. Howbeit, the standards of the priesthood and the people were expressly made known through the teachings of Moshe once and for all time. Throughout the history of Israel, we often find that the priesthood and the people wind up corrupting and defiling themselves with specific prohibitions that are outlined in this week's and preceding Parashat. The first sin of corruption within the priesthood was seen in Parashat Shemini, with the death of Aaron's two sons Nadab and Abihu, who brought a strange fire before Yah. With their unauthorized offering, we find that it is when priests and people do what is right in their own eyes, which is typically cynically motivated, that corruption, exile, and destruction ensue. To best capture this principle and its resolution in the life of Israel of old, I have chosen to examine the Second Temple era of the early first century period. Actually, that's the Third Temple era, prior to the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple by Rome. I have chosen to briefly analyze this era due to the rich tapestry of social life during this particular time that then existed. I believe that by examining this epoch will yield an intensive glimpse into the contextualization and polarization of the power structure that existed between the priesthood and the people. Not only is this time period the most recent and well-documented point of reference of the national life of ancient Israel due to the preserved records of the past from both primary and first-hand account sources that have been unearthed, but it is also the period of time in which the messianic idea of Israel was at its peak and most radical expression. With these matters in mind, we will briefly examine four significant first-century Israelite schools of thought that were present with the factions of the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Essenes, and Nazarenes. The Zadochim, the Sadducees. Very interesting group here. So, as this week's Haftarah from Ezekiel notes, it was the sons of Zadok who ascended to priestly power to eventually assume the role of the sole administrators of the precinct. Though not mentioned in this article, these are where all high priests came from this line, okay? From this position, they had come to serve as power brokers between the colonizing Roman power and the people of Israel. According to an article by Robert Mock from the website Bible Searches, around the early first century, quote, there was the house of Ananus and the influential high priest power brokers of the Sadducees. One of the reasons of the house of Ananus had their political power was in part with the collaboration and collusion of the Pharisees of the Beit, which is the school of disciples of Shammai. In the first century, the Pharisees of Beit Shammai were in charge of the institutional Jewish religion and were in control of the matrix or fabric of Jewish life. The house of Shammai, if you will, they were corrupted. They were much more corrupted in their capitulation of the Sadducean collusion with Rome. All right. And we'll get to that very shortly. Continuing on. This was because, again, the entire fabric of Jewish life was centered in the Mosaic rituals held in the Temple of Herod. On the other hand, there were the Hasidim that were closely known as the Essenes, who were buttressed by the disciples of the Beit or school of the disciples of Hillel the Elder. These were more righteous. The Hasidim, the lovers of Yah, who were known as the Essenes, were those who actually were the challengers of the Sadducees and actually the Pharisees of Shammai, Beit Shammai. So they viewed the temple hierarchy as apostates in the house of Zadok and the house of Aaron. So we can see that there was corruption present because of what was within them. They were descendants of the house of Zadok that had the divine authority to run the temple complex that had become corrupt like the sons of Eli, the judge of Israel. So we see that there was corruption that arose amongst the Sadducees during the Third Temple, early first century era. So known as the Sadducees, in Hebrew called Zadochim, a word meaning the righteous ones, this group eventually degenerated. Listen to why they degenerated. Due to their embrace of Hellenism and became adherents of an Epicurean philosophy, which held that pleasure was the greatest of all goods. They apostatized and they also defected from their own culture. Along with their literal interpretation and legalistic non-oral tradition-based stranglehold on the Torah, they held that there was no resurrection of the dead. With these notions as well as their aristocratic lifestyle, they were the ballers, so to speak. They were the ones who were the elite. They were the rich and the wealthy. The Sadducees disappeared out of Israel's national life when the temple was destroyed in 70 CE. The Perushim, or Pharisees. The other power party at this time in Israel was that of the Pharisees, or the Perushim, a term that means the separate ones. This group arose from among the proletariat, or the common people of Israel. The working class Pharisees sought to serve as a buffer between the Sadducees and the people, and provided the aristocracy with, at times more and others less, a system of checks and balances for power derived from officiating at the temple. This group of scholars was largely responsible for the education of the people and the preservation of the traditions of their fathers. They believed in the resurrection of the dead, and their adherence to the oral law and belief in the divine revelation of the Torah to Moshe kept them rooted in their culture and dissuaded them from any and all Hellenistic influence. Their hierarchy was based on the wisdom of the wise and their understanding and application of Torah. Their use of the Pardes exegetical method of interpreting scripture distinguished them from the literalist Sadducees, as the Pharisees were scrupulous scholars of the law, writings, prophets, and the developing Talmud. Yet, in spite of the righteous veneer that many Pharisees regularly exuded, they were not immune to the enticements of corruption. Of this matter, the Jewish Encyclopedia says, quote, "Nothing could have been more loathsome to the genuine Pharisee than hypocrisy." So when you're hearing Yahushua call these Pharisees hypocrites, he was striking them at the heart. He was going to the core. He was shooting for their jugular. He was going off with their head. Okay, so this was the worst thing you could call a Pharisee, a hypocrite. Whatever good a man does, he should do it for the glory of the Most High. Nicodemus is blamed for having given of his wealth to the poor in an ostentatious manner. But this is showing that Nicodemus was alive. He was real. Okay, he was historical. An evil action, which then further justifies us, or not justifies, but gives credence to the reality that Yahushua ben Yosef was historical as well, just to kind of, show why I brought that up. But an evil action may be justified where the motive is a good one. Still, the very air of sanctity surrounding the life of the Pharisees often led to abuses. We'll get to that, Elder. Alexander Jannaeus warned his wife not against the Pharisees, his declared enemies, but against the chameleon or hyena, the Zeboim, like hypocrites who act like Zimri and claim the ward of Phineas. Okay, Zimri was the one who was in front of Moses and his tent, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's who that was. But they expect to get the reward that Phineas got, who was the one that actually pierced Zimri and the Moabitess woman through with the spear. But an ancient Barita, okay, which is a external source to the Talmud and other reference, enumerates 7 classes of Pharisees, of which 5 consist of either eccentric fools or hypocrites. And this is actually kind of funny. So 1 is the shoulder Pharisee, who wears, as it were, his good deed or his good actions ostentatiously upon his shoulder, which is a hypocrite. This is what Yahushua talked about, those who want the longest zitzit, the biggest tefillin, right? They want to sit in the best places, always be called rabbi in the square, so that's who the shoulder Pharisee was. The wait a little Pharisee, whoever says wait a little until I have performed the good act awaiting me. 3 was the bruised Pharisee, who in order to avoid looking at a woman, runs against the wall so as to bruise himself and bleed. The pestle Pharisee, this is hilarious, who walks with head down like the pestle in a mortar. And if you're not familiar with the pestle or mortar, that's what crushes up the herbs, but the pestle's the part that actually does the crushing. So the pestle Pharisee is always buried. He's the ostrich, so to speak. 5, the ever-reckoning Pharisee, who says, let me know what good I may do to counteract my neglect. Okay? And 6 is the El-fearing Pharisee after the manner of Ejob. And 7 is the El-loving Pharisee after the manner of Abraham. Rabbi Joshua ben Hananiah, at the beginning of the 2nd century, calls eccentric Pharisees destroyers of the world, and the term Pharisaic plagues is frequently used by the leaders of the times. It is from this group, however, that both the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmud were composed and compiled from the writings of the Mishnah. Their codification of Torah and archival records of rabbinic rulings and case law have established a continuity between the ancient and contemporary expressions of the cultural practice of Israel, though not without challenge. It is interesting to note also, as you just said, Zaken Yonah, that it is from the Pharisees and their traditions that what is known today as Rabbinic Judaism finds its source with this group. Okay, so the Pharisees give us today all of Rabbinic Judaism, whether it be Orthodox, Conservative, Reformation, Reconstruction, or whatever. Reformative, Reform, or whatever they are. Rabbinic Judaism is nothing more than Pharisaic Judaism. The Zenuim, or the Essenes. Our next focus group is that of the Essenes, derived from the Hebrew word Zenuim, which is said to mean the humble or pious ones. This group had grown beyond disgruntled with the state of affairs at the temple precinct and decided to separate themselves from the ritualistic services surrounding the temple. The Essenes have come to our attention in the contemporary world through a discovery of what is known or called the Dead Sea Scrolls, found in the caves of Qumran in the desert of Negev, where they established their highly disciplinary community. As separatists, this group was known as ascetics and extremely rigid in their keeping of the Torah, standards of purity and holiness. Their disillusionment with the corruption of the temple and resultant culture in Jerusalem led them to develop an apocalyptic eschatological ideology of the present and future established upon the foundation of Israel's past Torah knowledge and history. This struggle that they perceived and articulated was between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. More than just a spiritual conflict, they expressed that this continual struggle is an ever-present dynamic that played out in the daily life of the righteous against the wicked. Robert Mock again captures the essence of Essene epistemology in his essay, The Essenes and the Hasidim, which tells us that, quote, the first existence of this community of religious and philosophical rebels from mainstream Judaism existed from the 3rd century BCE. Its existence all the way back to the time of the return of the Jews from Persia is suggested by at least one author, Theodore Gaster, who states that Hillel was a disciple of Ezra. In fact, the priest called Shechaniah, the son of Yehiel, who was talking with Ezra, is suggested as being one of the first Essene priests. This suggests that Ezra, the scribe who brought one of the waves of immigrants back to the land of Israel from Persia, was actually the first teacher of righteousness, Moreh Zedek, of the Essenes. So it's suggested that Ezra is the first teacher of righteousness of the Essenes, okay? So about 1950 years ago, the Essenes disappeared from all physical records. Gradually, a profile of the Essenes has been carefully pieced together by the scholars of antiquity. One of the biggest difficulties is that at the zenith of their influence in Jewish culture, they were a secret and very secretive organization. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, the oaths taken by an initiate into the sect after his rigid probationary period were that they were never to divulge any secrets of the sect to any outsider, even if they were tortured to death. And that's from the Jewish Encyclopedia. But since one of the central focuses of this study centered upon a mysterious individual called Menachem the Essene, the profile of this isolated and secretive group is important to know and understand. And Menachem is one of the names also of Mashiach. This is what they're saying, he who gives rest. Okay, that's also one of the names that Noah was given as well. The one who gives rest, even though Menachem is also a patriarch as well. Continuing on. They were known to be a group of pious Jews who spent their days in isolated closeness with the Elohim of Israel. As such, they became known as the Hasidim, the pious ones. Their research and study was to understand their Elohim, the Creator, better. Throughout their commentaries and writings, they mixed images of great conflict and turmoil, not only in their day, but in a future day of the returning Messiah. They were devoted in their love for the Elohim of Israel and for all mankind who walk in the light. End quote. Perhaps the most famous of the Essenes was Yochanan ben Zechariah, also known as John the Baptist. His ministry included reproving the Herodian monarchy, reforming the corrupted priesthood of the Sadducees, and challenging the diluted pedagogy of the Pharisees. Most importantly was his role as forerunner of the coming Messiah, to whom he was related by blood as a member of the tribe of Levi. This is getting where very interesting here. His proclamation of Israel's Redeemer, by which it is recorded in the witness of Matthew and Luke, was a fire and brimstone message in direct confrontation with the corrupted power structure held by the Sadducees and Pharisees, of which he was descended from in both lineage and pedagogy, yet unequivocally rejected what it had become in the mainstream. The witness of Matthew tells us that, quote, "But when he saw many Pharisees and Sadducees coming to his immersion, he said to them, 'You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath? Therefore produce fruits worthy of repentance, and do not think that you can say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father. For I tell you that from these stones, Ebanim, Elohim can raise up children, Banim, for Abraham.'" That's that play of words. It's very powerful. "Already the axe is laid at the root of the trees. Therefore, every tree that does not produce good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. As for me, I immerse you in water for repentance. But the one coming after me is mightier than I. I am not worthy to even carry his sandals. He will immerse you in the Ruach HaKodesh in fire. His winnowing fork is in his hand, and he shall clear his threshing floor and gather his wheat into the barn. But the chaff he shall burn up with inextinguishable fire." That's Matthew 3:7-12. His ministry set the stage for the final group of which this article sets its focus, that of the Nazarenes. And you can see comparatively the beliefs and the social class and just the whole demographic of the Sadducees, Pharisees, and Essenes in this graph right there. The Notzrim, or the Nazarenes, with all of the messianic expectations that were present in the first century. It was the sect of the Nazarenes that brought one of the most foreboding and challenging expressions of the messianic idea to the people of Israel. In Hebrew, this faction is called Ha-Notzrim, a word derived from a term that means branch. This concept is from the prophecy of Isaiah, which refers to a branch descending from the root of Jesse, who would come to have the 7 spirits of Yah rest upon him. Centered around the individual Yahushua ben Yosef, the teachings that he presented to the people was rooted in the radical message of a national return to the Torah, accessing ideas from the oral tradition with elements of the inspired tradition of the Essenes. Akin to the ministry of his cousin Yochanan ben Zechariah, Yehoshua's mission was indeed a revolutionary one, which bore all the markings of the messianic fervor that was present in the first century. Epiphanius of Salamis, a bishop from Cyprus who lived during the early 4th century, provides us with an eye-opening account of the Israelites. In his writing called the Panarion, he devotes an entire chapter of the sect of the Nazarenes, where he provides readers with a detailed description of who this group was, the nature and activities of its leader, and the central tenets of their ideology. He tells us that, quote, "But these sectarians who I am now sketching disregarded the name of Jesus, or Jesus, and did not call themselves Jesseans, keep the name of Jews, or term themselves Christians, but Nazareans, from the place named Nazareth, if you please. However," listen to this, "they are simply complete Jews." This is a Cyprian who is reflecting on who the Nazarenes were. They weren't Christian. They were complete Jews, he's telling the people. And people don't want to read this historical stuff. I was dealing with some people in this debate room called Jesus or Yeshua, Messiah or Nah, something like that. And I was referring them to the Panarion. People did not even want to read this book from the 4th century. They didn't want to deal with it because of the historical account that it provides. And it tells the people that they were not Christian. They were complete Jews. He goes on to say they use not only the New Testament, but the Old Testament as well, as the Jews do. For unlike the previous sectarians, which were the Cerinthians, they do not repudiate the legislation, the prophets, and the books Jews call writings. They don't disregard them. They embrace them. They have no different ideas, but confess everything exactly as the law proclaims it and in the Jewish fashion, except for their belief in Messiah, if you please. For they acknowledge both the resurrection of the dead and the divine creation of all things, and declare that Elohim is one and that his son is Messiah Yahushua. They are trained to a nicety in Hebrew. So if they're trained to a nicety in Hebrew, here's my question. Did they write their witnesses and their books and letters in Greek? If they're trained to the nicety of Hebrew, did they write their letters and their books in Greek? Yes or no? If they were dealing with the New Testament and they were trained to a nicety in Hebrew, did they deal with Greek? Yes or no? It's not a rhetorical question. Is that in for no? Exactly. They weren't dealing with Greek. They were dealing with Aramaic. They were dealing with Hebrew. Because this is who they were. They were Israelites from Yahudah and other areas. For among them, the entire law, the prophets, and the so-called writings, I mean the poetic books, Kings, Chronicles, Esther, and all the rest, are read in Hebrew, as they surely are by Jews. They are different from Jews and different from Christians, only in the following. They disagree with Jews because they have come to faith in Messiah. That's the only delineating factor with Israel that we have, is that we accept Yahushua. We're observant of Torah the same way you are. We're observant of the Moedim the same way you are. We keep Shabbat. We keep kosher. We dress the same. We honor the laws of purity. So the only thing that sets us apart from Israel is that we know and are becoming Mashiach. But since they are still fettered by the law, circumcision, the Sabbath, and the rest, they are not in accord with Christians. We ain't got nothing to do with Christendom because we're not Christian. They trying to be us, but don't want to be us. As to Messiah, I cannot say whether they too are captives of the wickedness of Cerinthius and Marinthius and regard him as a mere man, or whether, as the truth is, they affirm his birth of Mary by the set-apart spirit, end quote. So the most dynamic reality of this group is that they were a fusion of each of the previously mentioned group. They were of Sadducean order, of the Sadducean order, as Yehoshua was descended from the tribe of Levi and the sons of Zadok. If you knew that Yehoshua had Zadokian blood in him or Zadokite blood in him, type of 1. If you did not know that Yehoshua had Zadokite blood in him, type of 0. And we're going to show and demonstrate that very soon. This is very important to understand. This was like almost a bomb that went off in my head. And I knew it because I read it before, but to really think about it and realize it and accept it, it changes the whole scope of things. So we got two people that acknowledged it. Okay, Toda to you, Iman Aliyah and Zaken Yonah. And see, this is a powerful admission because this is how the learning curve really comes into our favor. Okay, this is important. Again, they were of the Sadducean order, as Yehoshua was descended from the tribe of Levi and the sons of Zadok. In fact, Rav Shaul in his book Melchizedek and the Passover Lamb has this to say about the matter. Quote, in the Bible, all that remains of Yahushua's image or lineage is through Miriam's father Eli or Eli in Luke. That, however, is only half his lineage through Miriam. What about Yahushua's lineage through Miriam's mother? We know from reading my third book, Christianity, the Great Deception, the degree to which the Romans turned Yahushua, the Jewish rabbi healer, into a pagan Roman god, Jesus, and removed all Jewish heritage from his life. We also know from the Talmud the extraordinary steps taken by rabbinical Judaism, Pharisaic Judaism, to which he was a challenger, to discredit Yahushua as a Messiah, even going so far as to change their calendar in 358 AD so that Yahushua's birth would not fulfill Daniel's prophecy. Given these dramatic steps taken over 2,000 years to hide the true identity of Yahushua, it seems his lineage through Miriam's mother somehow got lost along the way as well. We are about to find out why Yahushua's lineage through Miriam's mother was misplaced. And this is where it gets powerful. While this crucial information concerning Yahushua's lineage through Miriam's mother was removed from our knowledge, although it was carefully kept as all royalty does, we can know who Miriam's mother was for certain and reconstruct her true lineage. The Bible records Miriam, which is Yahushua's mother, went to live with her kinswoman Elisheba or Elizabeth while with child. Elizabeth was Miriam's auntie, the sister of Miriam's mother Hannah. We can go back into the historical record to discover that Elizabeth was one of the 3 daughters of the high priest Yahusha III. Okay, who is Yahusha III? He was the one who came back from the captivity during the days of Ezra and Nehemiah. In the book of Zechariah, we see him in chapter 3. One of Elizabeth's sisters was named Hannah, who was married in an arranged marriage to Eli or Eli. Eli is the father of Miriam, making Elizabeth's Miriam kinswoman or auntie, just like the Bible states, making Hannah her mother. Knowing who Miriam's mother was, we can research historically all the blood running through the veins of Yahushua the Messiah. Yahushua's mother Miriam and grandmother Hannah were in fact considered royalty in Israel, and both were candidates to give birth to the Messiah, as they were descended from the Zadokite priestly line and married to lions of Judah or Davidic dynasty heirs. Miriam was the granddaughter of the first high priest Yahusha III to serve in the second temple. She was the daughter of Hannah, who was the daughter of the high priest Yahusha. Yahusha III was the first high priest to serve in the second temple coming out of Babylonian or Persian captivity. Yahusha III was a high priest in the line of Zadok, or a Zadokite high priest, who was to re-establish the house of Zadok in the office of high priest. That's so powerful to me right there, to understand that Yahushua is actually directly related to the high priestly line of Zadok. That is revolutionary. And it makes all the more sense when we understand what his role was, going back to what Abraham realized on Mount Moriah. This is the true Melchizedek right here. And we'll get to that very shortly. This powerful admission of ancestry provides us with evidence of Yahushua's high priestly calling according to the order of Melchizedek, which is also Israel's most powerful king and prophet. Office-wise, the office, okay? The righteous king, okay? The priest, high priest of Shalem, okay? The king priest. This is what we come from. Our ancestors were priest kings as shepherds, and they were shepherds, all in the blood. Interestingly, his descent from the Zadokite line also legitimizes his ascent to the office of Messiah, which is also inclusive of his paternal connection to the tribe of Yehuda. It is significant to note that the intermarriage of these two tribes, Levi and Judah, goes back to the days of Moshe, as Aharon the high priest was married to Elisheba, who was the daughter of Aminadab and sister of Nachshon of the tribe of Yehuda. Not only was Aharon a Lewiim married to a Yehudi, but his sister Miriam was also said to be married to a Yehudi, either Caleb or Hor. This mix of priestly line with the royal line was what was a major determinant for the incarnation of the Messiah. There had to be a mix of this line, okay? With the appearance of Yahushua ben Yosef, this became a reality that sent shockwaves throughout the entire nation, creating a political and spiritual earthquake. The nation was split over whether or not this humble son of a carpenter was a Messiah. From garnering a great following from the people to the leadership to receiving death threats from the power structure, his challenge to Israel's hierarchy engendered sentiments of love and hate from his countrymen, as Rav Shaul tells us. Yahushua's life, this is quote, Yahushua's life and ministry inspired the hatred of the house of Ananias or Ananis, for only Yahushua was capable of toppling the power and authority of this powerful high priestly family that had turned the sacred house of Yah, the temple of Herod, into a den of thieves. So Patriarch Ananias and his son-in-law, the high priest Caiaphas, became the head of the leading Jews that instigated, plotted and conspired to fulfill their dream to eradicate the famous rabbi of Galilee named Yahushua the Nazarene, which means the branch, the royal descendant of David, and the Zadokite high priest Yahushua III. And the witnesses, they were the Jews who sought to destroy Yahushua. This is Caiaphas and Ananias. It was Yahushua HaNotzri who had garnered a large following in the foothills surrounding the Sea of Kinneret, or the Galilee. This large following was no accident, as Prince Yosef, his father, and Prince Miriam, his mother, were well-known candidates to be the parents of the Messiah. The people looking for the Messiah knew Yahushua was a royal prince, high priest, as he was the child of a very carefully cultivated bloodline of prince and princesses and high priests in the line of Zadok to Aharon. The Jews were eagerly awaiting the Messiah's arrival and came out in droves to hear Prince Yahushua the high priest speak to see if he was in fact the Messiah. Ananias and Caiaphas knew Yahushua was the rabbi who threatened to bring his spiritual revolution to the doorsteps of the temple, and they knew he was qualified to be the ruling Zadok, Melchizedek. In fact, that is exactly what Yahushua did. As in the bazaar of Hanan, with a whip in his hand, he threw out the money changers and almost toppled the power of the house of Ananias and Caiaphas. Here in the temple called the Temple of Herod Incorporated was being conducted the most lucrative money laundering enterprise in the Eastern Roman Empire. This is where it gets real deep. Think of a movie theater today and how you cannot bring food in. We do all the time, but that's another story. You are forced to buy food at exorbitant prices. In that day, when you went to the temple to make an offering, you had to purchase the animals to be sacrificed from the temple priests at exorbitant prices. You couldn't bring your own. I don't remember reading this statute in the Torah. Matter of fact, you brought yours to the temple, right? And if you didn't have it because it was too long to bring it, that's when you purchased in money change, right? But people worked and did business in a multicultural world at that time with many currencies. You also had to change your money from one currency to the next in the temple to give offerings at an exorbitant exchange rate. I don't remember reading that requirement in the Torah either. No, these were not authorized activities to be taking place in the temple. This was the source of the financial power of Caiaphas and the real reason behind his motivation to have Yahushua executed. Not only was Yahushua the legitimate high priest in the order of Zadok, but he was threatening to overthrow the money. We all know well how that goes. When you are a threat to the money, you must die. You see the Nazarene seal to the left. In addition to this, the Nazarenes were of the Pharisaic tradition due to the working class nature of this group, coupled with the influence of the teachings of Hillel and the views of the resurrection of the dead. They were as seen in spirit as Yahushua was the successor of Yochanan ben Zakariah, who immersed Yahushua and proclaimed him as the Lamb of Elohim sent to take away the sins of the world. Not only so, but the inspired exegetical method of interpreting the scripture was also a hallmark of Yahushua's teachings, which was given to his disciples. That this rarely recognized faction of first century Israel found a way to make such a powerful impression in history, yet go nearly without notice today, is a concerted effort by those in power from times past to present to suppress this order, which provides humanity with the most fulfilled pedagogy of Torah culture. That the Nazarenes, this little known sect today, was the most powerful faction of Israelite society in the first century is a fact of history that has not been truly squared with by the mainstream of both the Christian and Jewish worlds today. The reality of this presence of this group, however, must be reckoned with and examined in light of the powerful teachings of its rabbi, and his disciples, which have been preserved in the form of what is known as the New Testament. An extremely influential movement intent on restoring the power of the Torah as the oracles of Yah, empowering the people of Israel as the kingdom of priests and set apart nation that they were called to be, and toppling the corruption that was rife in society. The Nazarene movement of Israel has left its mark on society in indelible ways, which have defied attempt after attempt to remove the marks in history that they have made. as one of the leading Pharisees of that age profoundly spoke with reason about what the rulers of Israel were maliciously intending to do with Yahushua's disciples, we find that the check and balance of the Pharisees provided the world with the most pristine opportunity to discover the Nazarene movement from the first century, which was the host party of the revelation of the Messiah. Quote, but a certain one in the council stood up, a Pharisee named Gamliel, a teacher of the Torah, respected by all the people, and ordered them to put the emissaries outside for a little while, and said to them, men of Israel, take heed to yourself what you intend to do with these men. For before these days, Todah rose up, claiming to be somebody. A number of men, about 400, did join him. He was slain, and all who obeyed him were dispersed and came to naught. After him, Yehuda of Galilee rose up in the days of the census, and drew many away after him. He also perished, and all who obeyed him were scattered. And now I say to you, stay away from these men and leave them alone, because if this plan or this work is of men, it shall be overthrown. But if it is from Elohim, you are unable to overthrow it, lest you even be found to fight against Elohim. And they heeded his advice. And having called for the emissaries, beating them, they commanded that they should not speak in the name of Yahushua, and let them go. Then indeed they went rejoicing from the presence of the council, because they were counted worthy to suffer shame for his name. And daily, in the set apart place, and in every house, they did not cease teaching and bringing the good news, Yahushua HaMashiach, Selah. This is my offering, speaking truth to power. And we see that embodied in Yahushua. We see that embodied in his disciples, who despite every threat that they faced and even suffered eventually at the hands of the power structure, continued to bear witness in the testimony of Yahushua and faithfully kept the commandments of Yah. And that is how we overcome. That is the mystery of our overcoming. Those two things right there. If we want to overcome, bear the testimony. That doesn't mean just profess out your mouth. That means become how Yahushua became. That's what that means. Bear witness to the life of Mashiach in you. That's how you bear the testimony. And that is done merely by keeping the commandments of Yah. And those two simple principles are our endurance and our overcoming. And that is how we speak truth to power. That is it. That's the simplicity of it. Is it easy? I can't tell you that it's easy, because more than likely it's not. Even what our master went through, he said, Abba, if it's at all possible, go and take this cup, because I don't want it. But, not my will be done, thy will be done. And that's what that discipline, that's what that Esteen-like discipline that he had, that ascetic-like life, where he was unattached to so much around him. Even his family. He wasn't even attached to his family. Yehoshua, your mama and your brothers out here, they want to speak with you, man. He's like, what? Well, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And my mom and my brothers and my sisters aren't here doing the will of my Father. For him to make that delineation is powerful. And he was by no means a savior robot. No, ma'am. This was a full flesh and blood Yahudi and Lewi. And see, that's what really transforms this whole reality of who Yahushua was, because he is the fusion and the perfection of the Levitical order and the Davidic dynasty. He is the perfection of these matters. That's how he is high priest and king and the prophet. That makes so much more sense to me now after this week's study. And these Zadokites, we know that they got corrupted, and they don't even exist anymore. The Sadducees are not even in existence anymore as far as their teachings. Now, whether or not the bloodline of Zadok is around, I don't know. But in Yahushua, it was at the time. And so these are things that we have to really bear in mind as we seek to speak truth to power. And we got a lot of things, like that article said, to be morally outraged about. And to not go silent, because that is the moment, as well as Dr. King said, that you begin to die. Your life begins to end the moment that you remain silent about injustices. And so, it is my prayer that what has been offered today has been to your edification. I pray that it has been a challenge to you. I pray that it has been a unifying principle, that we all see what our collective mission is and what your specific capacity and what your specific role is in that particular matter has been brought to light as well, in light of what Moray M70 also brought. And so these things are imperative for us to be aware of, as morality needs to be at the center of our movement, as speaking truth to power needs to be a part of our MO as well. And becoming Mashiach is the central reality and principle that should be our focus every moment. Every moment. And that is what is our challenge. And so with that, I want to go ahead and prepare the transition. Moray Shabaniah, I do believe, are you going to come to the microphone, Moray? As we have come to the hour of 1 here in Central Standard Time. It's about 9 over there. I know it's a little late, but if you have something, Moray, are you going to come to the mic? Basetta. Okay, so all praise to the Most High for anything that has been spoken in truth. If anything has been to your edification, please give praise and esteem to Yah. Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to all who recently entered to Hebrew Vision. You have just heard my offering, Speak Truth to Power. I'm going to close with a Hatzi Kaddish and then bring Moray Shebanai to the microphone. So with that, hallelujah. Yit Kadal Vayikadesh Shemei Rabbah, Be'almadi Vara, Kerutei Vayimelech Malkutei, B'chayachunu V'yamichunu V'chayeda Kol Beit Yisrael, Bagala Uvizman Kariv, V'miru, Amen. Yeheshmei Rabba Mavorach, Le'olam Ulmei Almaya, Yit Barat Vayistabach, V'yipa'ar, V'yit Roman, V'yit Nasei, V'yit Hadar, V'yit Alei, V'yit Halal Shemeda Kudusha Berechu, Le'ela Min Kol Barachata V'shirata, Tush Bechata V'nechmata, Damiran Ba'alma, B'shem Mashiach Yahushua, Baruch Hashem, Hallelujah, V'miru, Amen. So please, Mishpachah, do relieve yourself if you need to relieve yourself. Get a little snack if you need a snack. But do come and position yourself and situate yourself once again, as we are going to now get ready to transition to our next Moray, who is Shebaniah, a true lion himself in Yah's kingdom and in Yah's word. Much love to you, Ak. Look forward to hearing what you have to share with us. But please welcome to the microphone, Moray Shebaniah Ben Yahuda. I relinquish the mic. Shabbat Shalom. One love.